And hello, everyone. Happy Friday and welcome to Get a Grip with Coach Elix. I'm your host, Coach Elix, and with me, my amazing co host,
Your husband, Stephen.
medium, attorney, and we can go on and on and on.
Please do.
Stephen the medium is here, and today, I know, if it was up to you, it would be a
Yes,
much
yes,
longer
please.
intro.
Yes.
Today, due to popular demand, we got a lot of great feedback from our listeners that they loved our open forum, and you know what? It was awesome when we had that conversation a week ago, and we're doing part two, open forum. So this is just an opportunity to have a real talk about real life. You have questions, we will have answers for you.
We will?
Yes, we will.
Well, we'll
Well,
make them
we'll
up.
well. That's my point. We'll have answers. We'll see. But before we get into that conversation, Stephen, let's talk a little bit about what we've been up to. We had an amazing last weekend because we celebrated April 8th is our 32-year anniversary, and we went to New York City and we had a spectacular time.
Yes, we
Want to tell
did.
people about what we did?
Well, it was just a whirlwind. It really was. It was, it was great. Seriously, it was great. It was always celebrating. We're just going to New York anyway. It's just so much fun. But being there and getting to celebrate our anniversary was just so amazing. The great thing was we take the train from Providence, 3 hours. We're there. And we no sooner got to the hotel, and shout out to all of them who help us so much at the hotel that we love, and gave us our room wasn't ready, so they gave us a temporary room so that we could change, because at 1:30 I think we were heading to the plaza for afternoon tea, which we had never done and we wanted to do it. So Alex, that was extraordinary.
Yeah, that's their version of high tea, and it's very well known. It's been an institution forever and ever at the plaza, and so I felt it was an experience of a lifetime. Something that if you do once, you should do at least once in your lifetime, right?
I
That's
agree.
that's that's what I feel, and it was just wonderful. I mean, the plaza is like this amazing institution in New York City. It just doesn't get any better than that. And just be there and have this afternoon tea, so proper and so amazing. I just loved everything about it.
What was really cute is that, Elix and I ordered, you and I ordered, two separate things, and they come with the big, the usual sort of afternoon tea with the big rack and all levels of food. And of course, we told him I was a pescatarian. So he had the guys putting it together. Sort of one column was things that did have meat with meat, and the others, were adjusted so that they didn't include meat. And I think the cutest thing was, because I'm a pescatarian and don't eat meat, our server came over with a little plate for me, in addition to the rack of food, with a little mini grilled cheese and little mini peanut butter and jelly.
And
Sandwich.
honestly, though, a grilled cheese and the peanut butter were part of like the little tea that they do for the children.
Yeah.
And of course, they chose those two little things for Steven. And those are two things that you love, by the way.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, I loved everything. I mean, I ate everything, but that was just so cute. Well, actually, the peanut butter and grilled cheese we shared. We both took bites of it, so we had to, right?
I, yes, absolutely. I loved it. I loved everything about it. And I love just walking around the property of the plaza because, again, that is just a classic institution in New York City.
And
But
never
that
mind the
was
tea, right?
the tea, of course. That was just incredible. But that
They,
wasn't it. We
no,
did a
no, but
lot
they
more than that.
but they
Go ahead.
give you a little gold container, and inside is
Oh,
the
yes.
traditional Plaza tea, which you can get there anyway. Which we did. We got two different types of tea, but I think it was really cute that they give you this little gold thing. And when we told the server that it was our anniversary, he went to the table next to us, and no one was sitting there, and took their flowers and put them on ours. So we had like double flowers, which was just so funny. He was a hoot. He was funny.
And that poor couple that came after us, their table had no flowers because our
They
waiter
didn't.
decided to put all of the flowers in our table. But
They
but
were they were
again,
they were from Alabama. That's where they were from. Alabama. So just saying.
and why Steven knows that is because I got up to go to the men's room, and allegedly her husband also got up, and we went to two different restrooms. And when I come back, of course, I see Steven talking to the wife,
Of
shockingly.
course.
And in those few minutes, you managed to gather everything about, what they were celebrating, where they're from, what they do. Only you, Stephen. Only you.
You know what? It was a good conversation.
It was. But that was an L. I mean, from there, we went to our favorite place for Cuban food.
Yes.
And that was
In the
awesome.
village.
In the village, in the Greenwich Village. And that was awesome.
Yes.
We got to be with Saul, right? I think.
Saul. Yes.
Saul. And
From Cuba.
correct. And then the following day we walked. I mean, every day, that's the one beautiful thing about NYC is that, Stephen, I think we walked, an average of 8 to 10 miles a day? Something like that?
I think we do every time we go. We do.
Yeah. And so we went to we walked around, we went to Macy's, and we needed to go to Macy's because we have a very special event coming up in Cape Cod.
Real special.
You want to tell people? I mean, let's take a little side turn so you can tell people about that.
So, on June 4th, there is going to be a incredible gala for the Arts Foundation of Cape Cod, and I think they do this on an annual basis. This particular gala, which is, I guess, is a really beautiful, gorgeous. The venue is beautiful. It's on the Cape, overlooking the water. I looked at the venue, and I am going to be auctioned off in this gala, which I think is the greatest thing, right? Someone's going to have me for a month. I'm just going to go live with them. You can do whatever you want with me. Just put me in a chair, set me up outside. It doesn't matter, right?
And
Whatever.
I get a whole month of being like on vacation.
You
Oh
wish.
my goodness!
You
Yes,
wish.
yes.
No, but seriously, I'm going to be auctioned off as one of the auction items with me doing a group reading up to 10 people, and I think there's also wine included in my auction. I think, and it's going to be again if someone wants to have it at their home, up to 10 people, or they can come into my office in New Bedford. So I am really, really looking forward to that. I think that's going to be really, really exciting.
I think that's amazing.
Yeah.
And honestly, to have a private reading of 10 people, up to 10 people in a private setting, intimate setting, whether it's at home, whether it's in your office, I think that is priceless.
Yes.
You can't put a price because what people walk out, the experience that they have is an experience of a lifetime. So. And of
agree.
course, but the reason why we needed to go shopping is because you needed. Well, we both needed
We both did.
an outfit, and we got amazing outfits. We're gonna look pretty damn good.
Elix in record time. We went into
record
Macy's,
time.
which is really the best Macy's ever.
9 floors of men's stuff.
And within seconds, we've both found our outfits,
Yeah,
which is really cool.
It was wonderful. So from there, then that evening we went to our favorite restaurant, One Eat by Land, Two Eat by Sea, which is really known as top rated, top five in the world for most romantic. We know the owner. We had a really special table set up for us. They were waiting. They knew we were celebrating big. And that was amazing. I mean, that was spectacular.
And our server, Fernando.
Fernando, yeah, Fernando was amazing. We got to meet Alec, who is Gito, who's the owner. His son also manages the restaurant. So overall, I mean, it was just great. And then we met your family. We went to Sarah Beth for
For brunch.
brunch, and that was fabulous. If you know anything about brunch in NYC, that's a place that you just want to go to. It was so amazing. So overall, I have, and this time, thankfully, if you've heard the story before, last time Steven almost got us in the wrong train, going to the wrong destination.
Well, no, I got us in that wrong train. We were in the wrong train.
Yeah, but what I meant to say is that we literally almost go into the wrong destination because, of course, you just doing your thing and me not paying attention. But this time we got on the right train. Thankfully, we made it back home, and that was that was just overall, Stephen. I think that will go down as one of our best anniversary celebrations ever.
It was great. And actually, after Sarah Beth's, after brunch, my nephew's wife had to go back home to spend time with her family. So it was just the four boys. So we just walked around and had such a great time in the city. You know those times that you stop in. My brother knew this French little pastry shop, and you order and get coffee and pastries and then go upstairs, and upstairs with just tables. And it was just those spontaneous things that just happen are always
The best.
always just like the best times, right?
The best, the very, very best. So that was our anniversary weekend. But oh my God, we will have to talk about what we did last night with our friends John and Krista. So maybe we'll talk about that before we close the show. But we do have to take our first break, and when we come back, we are gonna pick up where we left our last conversation 2 weeks ago. We will continue with our open, real, and unfiltered conversation about life. So listen in to keep growing and thrive. If you have questions, we'll have answers for you. So you can call us or you can listen to us through the live stream. Which, by the way, Jim, it's producing our show today. I think we may have an issue with the live stream. I'll check
Yeah.
in
The live
during
stream
the break.
it's been off for a little bit.
Yeah, so we'll check in with him during the break. But check in with us, send us your questions, be in communication, and we'll have an amazing conversation. So we'll be right back. And hello, everyone, and welcome back to Get a Grip with Coach Elix. I'm your host, Coach Elix, and with me, my amazing co-host,
Stephen F.
Stephen Frederick Masick, who is my husband, an attorney, and a medium, Stephen the Medium. And today we are, by popular demand, we're having yet another open forum. It's all about real talk, real life. No filters, no scripts, just real, honest conversations about life, love, challenges, and everything in between, anything and everything you want to talk about. And this is just a reminder, this conversation is a reminder that life isn't about perfection, it's about progress, and and we're doing good. We're doing fine no matter what, what it is that we face day in and day out. So with that said, Stephen, what would you like to talk about? What would you like to start with?
Well, that's such a loaded question. I love it. I would say something that's honestly that's been sort of on my mind is I don't know if it was last week or so. I got home. I think it was from New Bedford from my office, and I was eating lunch, and I put the TV on, and there was I don't know what show it was, but it was just a woman that was talking about her dealing or bouts with anxiety from when she was young, up until the present age, and she probably looked like she was probably in her 40s or so, and coming from myself, just like I'm sure there's a lot of people. I have dealt with anxiety my entire life, and the mindful meditation, and everything. Spirit has helped me in so many ways because I meditate so often. And one of the things that I realized in that I'm not really sure if I actually have taught this in the last class I course I did, or it's coming up. But one of the things that I realized that I think it's really important for people to know is that, and again, it's based on what I dealt with anxiety, and I still deal with anxiety, is anxiety just doesn't drop on you, right? It just doesn't drop on your head. It's not like a lightning bolt that just comes and hits you. It's triggered by something, and so often it is, if not always, it's triggered by a thought. And I was just thinking about that and thinking, it's so interesting that when you have a thought in your head and you sort of let it come in, almost like the thought comes in and you sort of jump in. If the thought was a bubble, you jump into the bubble, and now you're in that thought. That's the world you're in right now. So whatever that thought was, is what you're dealing with, what you're sharing, what's in your existence. And so it's been so helpful for me to understand that, to help me with anxiety, and understanding that a thought is just a thought, and that once you realize and sort of, not throw out the thought, but just in a very, I always say you never resist, right? Because it makes it worse. But just going into that thought when you realize it, and just saying, I understand why you're here. I know you're trying to protect me. I know you're trying to look at what's in the future, whatever the case may be, but you're not the present right now. And it has helped me pull out of that thought. And it's really, for me anyway, Elix, it's really helped me to not go down that anxiety road, but even in a bigger way. It's just helped me understand the difference that what the thoughts are versus like the present in who my soul is. Am I making sense?
Yeah, you are making sense. And I do have a follow-up questions because, one of the things I've shared with you, with many of our listeners, and this is something that has happened to me later in life. I, as you know, whenever we have to travel, I get a lot of anxiety. Anxiety about getting to the place, anxiety about traveling, anxiety about waiting to be called to board a plane, and anxiety about everything going through TSA. So when you said, trying to get to the source of what is it, I thought, but I don't know what causes it, right? But then when you talked about, thinking of it as the thought, right? But the question that I have for you, Stephen, how so, but how what do I need to do? Because I get it. Okay, so I think I get it, but I still find my body responding, heart rate, nervousness, uneasiness. So how do I stop that?
Well, Elix, I love the question because, like, why you're feeling that is because you're in the bubble. You have jumped in that bubble, that thought bubble, and it's now your universe, right? So everything that one thought started, and of course, as you're in that bubble, you can't really tell how many other thoughts that are feeding that. So if it is if the thought pops up, what happens if something happens to the plane when we're in it, when it's flying? What happens? So you jump inside that bubble, and then everything else in that bubble starts. What happens if they give me a hard time in security? What happens if I have someone next to me in the plane that is just doesn't know boundaries, or is loud, and it keeps going and going? So of course your body's going to react to that when you're living that bubble. And the most important thing is just, again, realizing you're in that bubble. And I'll tell you, one thing I found with me, Elix, is that when it is a thought that is a possibility, that is the hardest thought or bubble to get out of. So if a bubble pops up in your head, right? If a thought pops up in your head and says that when I go outside, I'm going to get eaten by a lion. Okay, so we live in Cape Cod. So clearly there's no lions in Cape Cod, right? So that is way easier to sort of dismantle because it's not a possibility. I should say the possibility is really, really low that someone's going to bring a tiger or a lion, in front of our house, and it's going to start eating us, right? But if you've got a thought that has a possibility to it, like, I mean, well, God forbid, the plane could crash, or you could have that person next to you, or you could get stuck in security, or whatever the case may be. That is way more difficult. It's like you get even more sucked into it. And that's where I think so many people have, as you just talked about, anxiety and have that reaction. And then, when you get into that formula, it's really easy to keep doing it and getting into that bubble. You have to how to get out of it and stop the reaction in your body is that you really have to make an intentional, put it in your intention that I understand right now I am in a bubble, and the bubble is a bubble of this thought is in this bubble, a bubble of possibility, but it's not happening right now in the present. It's not happening. So that's what this the way I work, the way I do it is just sort of thank you thought, thank you bubble, but you know what? I'm not staying in this bubble because it's not real right now. And I need to come back to the present. And you know what has worked for me, which I absolutely love, is that when I'm in that sort of situation in my brain or in my head, I always say to myself, where are my feet? And I'm telling you, Elix, for me, and I'm sure for people, it just will pull you out of it. Because when you say, where are my feet? And you look down, that immediately pulls you into the present. You have to, because you're looking at your feet. Yeah, exactly. Well, that was I was going to say that too. Maybe you're the medium, Elix. I was going to say it also does. It does when you look at your feet. It's actually without knowing it, the roots on the bottom of your feet are going right into Mother Earth, and it's grounding you. But it is just a way to say, I'm in the present, and right now, even if that's a possibility, it's not happening right now. It's in the present. So if I stay in the present, everything is going to relax. My body's going to start relaxing. It's because I'm not in that bubble anymore.
Yeah. No, I mean, I get it. And the more you describe it, the better. I hope our listeners understand and getting some value out of getting value out of what you're saying, because for me, again, anxiety starts the moment, I know we're going to travel the day before. And it's about, am I going to be late? And the truth is, am I late? No. Has that happened? No. Right? Are we going to miss the plane? Has that happened? No. Right? So I think that's really important, Stephen. And I never thought about just asking myself, like, so what is happening now? What's the reality now versus what is that thing I'm telling myself that is causing the discomfort, the anxiety, the uncertainty, and the stress, that my body feels in that moment.
Well, whether you know it or not, when you just said to me and all the listeners that the anxiety starts the day before, I mean, how does it start?
It's by me thinking about it.
It's a thought. Exactly.
Exactly. By me thinking
And
about it. Yeah.
exactly. And but you just don't let it, you're not just thinking about it without knowing it. You are jumping in that bubble.
I'm
And
feeding
that's
it.
why
Yeah.
everything happens.
Yeah. I'm feeding the bubble. I really
Yes.
love that. I know we got to take another break shortly, but Stephen, one of the things I thought about, I wanted to ask you, but of course I'm thinking about the question myself, like, what would be one thing that you wish people talked about more openly in life in general, right? But I thought, but before I ask Stephen the question, I want to think about it for myself. And and a few weeks ago we had Chris Ansermo, who was our guest talking. He was diagnosed with a very rare form of muscular dystrophy, and he created this blog, and I believe he wrote a book about Hello Adversity, and he talked about he could have talked about how you know about the disease itself is, or about whatever, but instead he sort of decided, no, I'm going to actually talk about the adversity, embrace the adversity. And with that in mind, what I thought about, and Steven, we can talk about it when we come back, is I think one conversation that we avoid in general is to talk about how messy growth is for all of us. Because when you think about what we do, social media in particular, we're always talking about celebrating success. We're always talking about celebrating gains, transformation, becoming something. But we never ever talk about the discomfort. We never talk about the doubts. We never talk about the parts that fall apart before things come together, before we get to that place. And I think that is a meaningful conversation that we should all be having, because I think that's where the opportunity for growth for all of us, learning for all of us, exists. Do you know what I'm saying, Stephen?
Yes.
So we're gonna take a break, and when we come back, let's pick up on that conversation. We'll be right back. And hello, everyone, and welcome back to Get a Grip with Coach Elix. I'm your host, Coach Elix, and with me, my amazing co-host.
Stephen the medium.
And today we have an open forum. It's about real talk, real life. No filters, no scripts, just real, honest conversations about life, love, challenges, and everything in between. And before we took a break, one of the things I was talking about is, I wanted to ask you, like, what is the one thing you wish people talk more openly about life in generally? And I thought for myself, like, how would I answer that question? And I think we should be talking about more about how messy growth is for us. For what it is that we do, what we're pursuing, because we often, especially with social media, Stephen, we know friends who avoid social media because it brings them a lot of stress and anxiety because they feel it's always like a competition, right? Because all that you
Right.
see in social media is look at me, look what I done, look how what I gained, look what I did. So we're always talking about celebrating success. Nothing wrong with that. Celebrating transformation. Nothing wrong with that. Or becoming, but we never talk about the discomfort. What happens when we feel that discomfort? What happens when we are self-doubting? What happens when things fall apart or we have breakdown or we experience plenty of things that don't go the way we want them to go? And those are things that I think are just as important. I think that's a real meaningful conversation that would add value to many of us. What do you think, Stephen?
Yeah. So you mean people not being open or having discussions about the things that didn't go right when they're in the process of growing?
Yeah, like I think we have our humanness, right? We have a tendency, like if something doesn't go right, we don't talk about it. We avoid the subject. We don't even post anything on social media, right? Because and that is also worth noting. So why? Why do we do it? I think we do it because, of course, there's always fear of judgment. There's that shame and comparison culture that we've been conditioned to. Sometimes, culturally speaking, there's messages about, what makes you stronger, manly, whatever. And I think that's what some of the reasons why it keeps us from talking about when things are not working, like being open about it. Like I think it would be a, a really healing exercise to say, you know what, this is what I'm doing, and I'm failing, or it's fail, or I've attempted this 10 times and I'm still getting the no's, and share that with people. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, you know what? It reminds me, like just a couple of days ago, I was on Instagram and a feed came in, which it was a story. So I looked at it. It was a guy. And then from that, I went to his page just to see what this page was all about. And it was those, because what you're talking about, I think the majority of us do this, but this was one guy in the minority because he's somewhere in the South, and as I looked at his videos, because he just looked like the reason why it pulled me into his account was he spoke in such a vulnerable way, like just in such a, I don't know, like open-hearted way that caused me to go to his main page. And then when I started looking at his videos, and he's got thousands of people watching him. At one point, when you're scrolling down and you're not clicking on something, you can see the video moving, but you can't hear what it's saying. And one of them was him, had shorts on and in a shirt that was open, and he was dancing. And so I clicked on it, and it was music. He was dancing, but he clearly looked like he had stomach surgery, like bypass surgery to lose weight, because just his he just had still a lot of skin just sort of hanging. And so when I listened to another video, he had mentioned that he did have the surgery, and he had lost, I don't know, 350 or 400 pounds.
Wow.
And there was another one that he has partial dentures, and one broke. And on this video, he in his hand, and in the partial video, the partial denture or plate or whatever is part of his front teeth. He was holding that partial plate and speaking clearly that you could see completely his no front teeth, and talked and showed an old partial plate that he had that doesn't fit anymore. He put that in, and I just can't believe you're bringing the subject up, because I was just thinking in my head, oh my Lord. I mean, he seems like such a nice guy, but in my head I'm thinking, why in God's name would you do that? Like, why would you show everybody on social media like you have no front teeth, or you're dancing and you clearly, and he had mentioned he's already had 2 skin removal surgeries, but he kept losing weight, so there's a little bit more that's got to be done. And
But
I think it's just a good reflection or representation of what you're saying, because clearly you don't see that a lot, and that's what prompted me to go to his page
But
and
that's my
think,
point.
wow, yeah,
Somehow, even in the discomfort of like, oh my God, why would you do that? Why would you say that? You were still drawn towards his page. You were still drawn toward to listening to what he was saying. And at some point, I forget exactly, the word that you used, but you said something like he was just, being vulnerable or authentic. I can't remember exactly what you
yeah. I
said.
did say authentic and vulnerable, but I didn't see those videos. The video he posted was just a normal post with teeth. I mean, I had no idea he even had a partial. He was just, the way he was speaking. He was going to an event, and the way he was speaking, that vulnerability pulled me into his main account page, and that's where I saw all of that.
Yeah, and I think that is really the golden nugget, that when we avoid talking about how messy growth really is, because again, we're afraid of judgment or shame or whatever the reason, right? But at the same time, when we see that, Stephen, I think that is a way to connect with people also, because we all experience breakdown, we all experience failure. And I be honest, when somebody is willing to be that vulnerable to talk about their failures or what hasn't worked, or it draws me into, because it makes me first of all, it validates, oh wait a minute, I'm not the only one. And almost like what you said to me before when we were talking about anxiety, it's almost like you could then say, so what? So what? So what if you fail? So what does that mean? Does that make you a bad person? No. Does that mean that your, life is going to end? No. So what? So what? And I think that is such an opportunity. And I think it's an opportunity that most of us, me, myself included, we take for granted.
I agree. I mean, I completely agree. And as a matter of fact, excuse me, when you just said what you said, it's sort of, when you become that vulnerable, you sort of, like, people connect with you. And in the video with his teeth, he actually said, I'm overwhelmed with people that I don't know if there was a video before that or not. It didn't seem like it, but somehow the his Venmo account, and maybe he did say it, I don't know, but all I know is that he was just saying that how amazing people are, and how he was so touched because he needed money to, because he's a stylist, and he needed money to purchase this new plate. And I think, putting aside how it got there, because he said, I didn't ask for it, whatever the case, put that aside. I just think exactly what you said happened, is that people connected with him on a human basis, and on a we're all one basis, and because of that, sent money to him.
Yeah.
It's
I
pretty
I
amazing.
I think, Stephen, that the human connection is stronger when we allowed ourselves to be vulnerable than when we try to show up as perfect.
Yes.
Because, if you're perfect, then there's nothing I can contribute. And possibly I'm not going to, I would think, well, you could contribute anything to me either because, you're perfect. But when you allow yourself to be vulnerable, I think that creates a much stronger human bond among all of us.
Yeah, I also think it's on many levels. It's also therapeutic, and it's definitely very helpful because when you have that dialogue with anybody, and that conversation just lends itself to just a very productive conversation, a very therapeutic conversation of listen, this is life. This is what we go through. This, whatever.
Yeah, yeah. We got to take our last commercial break, and but when we come back, I want to ask you that question, and we'll continue with our conversation today. Open forum, real about real life. We'll be right back. And hello, everyone. Welcome back to Get a Grip with Coach Elix. I'm your host, Coach Elix, and with me, my amazing co host,
Stephen Frederick.
Stephen Frederick, Stephen the Medium, who is my husband and a medium. And today we are having an open forum, real talk, real life, no filters, no scripts, just real honest conversation about life, love, challenges, and everything in between. And the question that I had wanted to ask you, Stephen, is what's the one thing that you wish people talk about more openly about in life generally?
Well, I don't think this is going to come as a surprise to many people, especially people that know me. But I wish people talked more about their experiences with spirit when somebody dies, because I can't tell you how many readings I do, and so many times people will say to me in the reading, they'll, whoever's coming through and chatting, and I'm giving messages, and the person I'm reading will say, I had this experience, and whatever the experience it was, and then will always or many times follow it up with, I never told anybody about it. Because I thought I would think I was crazy, or I'm not really sure, did it really happen? And because of what I do, and connected so much to spirit, and I think also because of where this world is now, and just people, so many people are looking for something. They're looking for something to hang on to, because there's so much energy. There's still so much love, but there's still so much hate, and it's a lot for everybody. And some people get affected, more easily, and some don't. Like, we're all different, but talking, I think, about spirit sort of in an open forum, even if it's to a friend or whomever, I wish people, and some people clearly do that, but I wish that people would do that a little bit more often, because it always opens up the conversation to feeling better. Because chances are, if you say something like you had this experience, most likely, or more likely than not, the person you're talking to is going to say the same thing. Well, I had an experience also. And it just, that conversation, I think, brings peace. And even though, you're talking about your loved ones who you've lost, and you can be sad and whatnot, listen, you're going to be sad anyway. The grief doesn't take a break, right? The grief just waits for you, and it's going to come whenever it comes. So talking about it, I think, is sort of a way to sort of include the grief in a positive way, if you will.
And why do you think people that is? I mean, Stephen, why do you think that is? Is it religion, culture, perhaps fear of judgment? Why do you think people don't talk about it?
I think it's all of the above. I think everything you just said, Elix, I just check, and check, and I think the unknown is the biggest piece. I think because we don't grow up. I was just saying this to somebody in a reading, because we were having this conversation in a reading, and I said, you never hear anybody saying, I went to grammar school, I went to high school, or I went to college, and for the most part, we had a class on spirit, or we had a class on death, or it's just not, it's not there. It's not in the academic world, and it's because it's not there. It pretty much sort of gives that sort of thought in people's heads that if we're not talking about it in mainstream, like we are regular courses, and especially academic courses and college courses, or courses to get you to college, which that's what the whole education system set up for, right? Like, you go through school, you got to get it, you got to go through college to get a good job, and that's how you're set up. I think because no one's talking about it, it's sort of labeled a little bit like voodoo, like,
Taboo.
yeah, like so we're not going to talk about it, and that's something hard to overcome, even though it has been overcome because of right now, just so many overt mediums that you can just go on YouTube, or social media, like myself, and see that there are people that are believers and bring through your loved ones. So I think it's a lot of, I think we've come a long way, thank God, knock on wood. But that would be my answer to that question. I just wish people would start speaking a little bit more about their experiences, and not be afraid to say, I think I believe that there's no death. And I believe that my mother, who passed away, is still with me all the time. I swear I feel her.
If they, I mean, of course, I would say, hey, the first thing I would say to anyone like that is, you should make an appointment to see somebody like you. But if they're not quite prepared for that, Stephen, what do you think would be an easy way to ease into that process, to start letting go of that old and letting in, perhaps embracing the loved ones in spirit?
Well, I mean, I don't think there's anybody can tell someone or force someone or get them to a different place, right? I always say
Mm-hmm.
when people say to me about coming, they lost someone and they're trying to figure out what's an appropriate time. My response always back to someone that asked me that is, like tune into your heart, tune into your soul. You got to be ready for it. You have to know that's the step that you're going to take. You're ready for that step. So I don't, I always say to people too when I do readings, or especially if it's a big group, is that I'm not here. If you're coming in, you're a skeptic. I'm not coming in to change your mind. I don't do what I do to change anyone's mind. I just do what I do as a medium and give messages because I know your loved ones in spirit know that it's going to be very healing and change your life on so many levels. So I'm not really sure, Elix, like if there's anything, because depending on where the person is, I always say the best, I guess if I had to say something, I would always say that when you get to the place of knowing that you don't know everything, that's the start. That's the beginning.
Yeah, and I think that that alone is just such a wise way to sort of like complete this part of our conversation today because we just live Stephen our lives as if we know everything, and the truth is what we know is of all the knowledge of the universe, and you know this, I've learned a lot of this from you. What we know in the human through the human lens is a dot. That's it. Like we
We
know
think we know. We think we
we
know, but
yeah,
but you're right. You're right.
yeah.
We don't.
We think we not only do we think, we behave, we act as if we know everything.
Yes.
But the truth is what we know is the little dot in
And,
comparison to all the knowledge of the universe.
and that's the greatest thing about this. I always say when you can think about becoming multisensory, like going past the five senses. I always use the same expression. That is where the magic happens.
I love that. I love that. And that's why I love these conversations because when we have an open forum, we really don't have a script.
No.
It's just the conversation goes wherever the conversation goes, and it's always, always, always perfect. And Stephen, talking about perfect before we complete our show today, how was that experience? Five course wine pairing dinner experience at Sierra on Sales last night.
It was it was amazing. Well, you know what? That was amazing. I don't know. The company with being with John and Krista was just. I mean, I never laughed so much with those two.
Yeah,
It was
yeah.
so in the whole experience getting to, because we know the owner, we know the manager, we know so many people there, and it is the most beautiful venue. But the food was it was just incredible, and they even changed a couple of the dishes or courses for me being a pescatarian. So it was just amazing.
You're always the high maintenance of the group, and they love you. But the food was spectacular, but the wine was spectacular, Stephen.
Yes.
I actually enjoyed everything about the evening. Of course, being with John and Krista, that's the first time that they've been there, and I think they loved the experience. And I just wanted to give a loud shout out to Vessel for, as always, taking such good care of us.
He
What a
always does.
wonderful man.
Yeah.
So, but Stephen, we reached the top of the hour, and before we finish our show, I want to make sure that you tell people what you're up to, and of course where they can find you.
Well, you can find me under Stephen the Medium, my website, as well as social media. And it's the best place to go is my website because that will show you exactly what I'm up to and making appointments, whether via Zoom or in person or doing a whisper in a note, and it's all there. As a matter of fact, as soon as I hang up, I have to whisper inner notes to record. So if you're wondering what is Stephen talking about,
What is
go to
that,
my
Steven?
website, and it's really, the service is really cool.
Yeah, and you can be anywhere. I know we have listeners from all over the world,
Yes.
so you could be anywhere in the world, and you could have a reading with Steven via Zoom. And for me, if you're not following me, you should, because you should be looking at Coach Elix and following what Coach Elix is all about on any of the social media platform. And Stephen, I also want I tomorrow we have awesome friends, Julie from the Cape Cod Art Institute, Sarah Rue, and her husband, Jim, Julie's partner. They're coming, and we're very excited to host them tomorrow.
Yeah, and Sarah's husband, Kevin.
Kevin, yes, Kevin will be here. So we're really, really excited and look forward to hosting them tomorrow.
Yes, I'm excited.
So we are done. Thank you, our GM Jim Jones, for rearranging his life and schedule to make sure we do the show today. Because if you notice, our producer Mark was not available. He's actually doing some taking care of himself, his health today. But he will be back next week. So thank you, Jim. Thank you, everyone at WARA, and we will be back next week. Goodbye, everyone. Have a wonderful
Bye
weekend.
bye.
Bye.